Great. Thank you so much. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about qualitative research, which is not something we've talked about yet today. This talk is going to be about incorporating qualitative research into a probability-based panel and what happens when you do that. So I want to start by thanking my co-authors, Kyle Berta and Jared Gumps, and dive in. So first of all, a little bit about the SSRS opinion panel. You heard Cameron talk about it a little bit at lunchtime today, but it's a probability-based panel. It's nationally representative, 18 plus. We recruit our panelists through address-based sampling, and we have a prepaid cell phone RDD supplement to improve our coverage. We're a multi-mode panel. Most of our respondents participate online, but we also have live telephone interviewing available for those who don't use the internet or who prefer phone surveys. And our surveys are conducted in English and Spanish. So as the utilization of our panel has been increasing, there's been growing interest in using the panel for qualitative studies, for cognitive testing, as well as for other applications. So we went through a lot of considerations, which I'll show you some of those in a moment, to really try to make sure we were protecting the sanctity of our panel. And the more we use them for qual, is it going to start impacting the way they behave in surveys? And what do we need to be worried about? So that was kind of the motivation here, to make sure that we weren't tainting what happens with the survey experience by exposing them to qualitative studies. So our primary research question here is, how does participation in qualitative research impact future participation in a probability-based survey panel? So before we dive into that, I want to just teach you a little bit about how we do qualitative research with our panel, and that kind of guides some of our analyses that we did. So we have a number of different qualitative methods that we use with our panel. And again, each of these were things that we had to carefully consider. Do we want them to do cognitive interviews? Yeah, sure. Do we want them to participate in individual in-depth interviews? Yeah, sure. Do we want them participating in focus groups with other panelists? We could do that. And do we want to send them outside of our panel environment to an online bulletin board where they're sort of participating in a whole different experience? Maybe. So the answer is kind of yes for all of that. Sure, let's try it out and see how it goes. We recruit our participants for the qualitative studies through a customizable screener. So it's all kind of predefined how we message to them that we have sort of a special study that we're inviting our panelists to participate in. And then we can tailor that based on the quotas that we're looking for the particular qualitative study. In order to be eligible for qualitative research, you have to be an active panelist and have completed at least 2 surveys with us, because again, we wanted to protect our new panelists and not expose them to qualitative research before they had really gotten in the groove of responding to surveys. We also incorporate a self-scheduling module so that we don't have to deal too much with these logistics of trying to figure out when to schedule someone for this live interview. But then we use human reminders so that they get a personal touch and feel like they're really connecting with someone so that they show up for their live interview. Our interviews are typically 30 to 45 minutes, but I'll show you in a moment how that plays out. And then we can not only recruit our panelists for the qualitative research, but we can also recruit other members of their household for qualitative research. So again, that was a decision that we had to make. Do we want to limit ourselves to the panelists or go beyond that? Our incentives are typically $25 to $50 for the qualitative research, whereas for surveys, they're in the $5 to $10 range. And then we'll typically over-recruit people just like we would in any qualitative study to make sure we hit our numbers. So across all of the qualitative studies we've conducted, we've done 40. We started doing this a couple of years ago. 2023 was when we really kicked into high gear with this. We've done 40 studies so far since then. We've touched about 300 panelists. And you can see here, most of what we've done since then has been cognitive interviewing, but we've also had several in-depth interviews that we've done and 1 online bulletin board. We have yet to do focus groups, but those are coming very soon. You can see with topic salience, the topics are not always salient to the participants. Sometimes it is, like doing qualitative research with teenagers about social media use, or people who use tobacco about tobacco use. But sometimes the topics are not so salient to them. So that's something that we want to keep our eye on as well. In terms of the length of the research studies, again, most of them have been kind of in this 30 to 45-minute range. I'm missing the label for the orange bar, which is 120 minutes, and that was our online bulletin board that we did. It was on Inauguration Day. We invited panelists to log onto a board and watch Trump's inauguration speech and give us live feedback in the moment. For that study, they were paid $125. But again, most of our studies are in that 30 to 45-minute range and paying people $25 to $50 for that. So this is just one example of one of the studies that we conducted. This was cognitive testing on new tobacco products, and we considered this sort of a high salience study because we were subsampling current tobacco users within our panel. We did a 30-minute cognitive interview over Zoom. We paid them $25, and we recruited 12 people for 10 people to show. You can see roughly how many people we sampled, how many completes we got, how many qualified, scheduled, and interviewed. And notably, we had a lot more people who qualified than who we actually scheduled and interviewed, which just shows there's a high level of interest in participating in qualitative studies. Okay, so let's get to the modeling. In order to look at what is the impact of qualitative participation on future panel survey participation, we had 5 kind of hypotheses that we tested. The first one is just looking at survey completion rates. So once they participated in qualitative research, what happened on the very next survey that they were invited to? Our hypothesis was, let's hope that it made them more engaged and they'll be more likely to respond. And then we also looked since their qual study, all subsequent surveys that they participated in. And then we looked at that individual level before they were invited to qual, what was their behavior versus after they participated in qual. Then model 2 looks at data quality. We did have some sincerity checks and trap flags. So we were looking at the rate at which they failed those sincerity checks and trap flags, again, in all the surveys since they participated in qual and what their behavior was before and after. And then satisfaction, at the end of every survey, we asked them, what'd you think about this survey? So on a 5-point scale, the percent giving a 5. And what do you think about your experience as a panelist? Percent 5s. And then finally, we give them an opportunity to tell us, what can we do to improve your experience as a panelist? And one of the response options is pay me more. So we were very concerned, like if we're paying them a lot for qual, would they want to be paid more for their surveys? So let's look at the results. We also had a bunch of independent variables in our models, including a counter for chronic non-response, so how many surveys they had missed in a row at the time of participating in qualitative research, how long they'd been in the panel, a bunch of demographics. And then the things we're really interested in looking at are the effect of the type of qualitative research they were invited to, the salience of that topic, how long that interview was, how much we paid them, and whether it was the panelists themselves versus another household member. Okay, so on model hypothesis 1 about survey completion rates, bottom line, no effect. Woo-hoo! No effect. So participating in qualitative research is not impacting their future survey behavior. Models 2 had to do with data quality, and here we do see a significant effect for panelist versus other household member. So basically, if the panelist is the one participating in the qualitative research, their failed sincerity and trap checks go down by 8.2 percentage points, which is also good news. It means that they're giving us better quality data in subsequent surveys. Models 3 look at satisfaction with surveys, and here we see a significant effect in that pre versus post modeling, which is showing that they become more satisfied, basically, when they participate in qualitative research with the individual surveys that they're responding to. They're 7.5 percentage points more likely to give a 5 on the 5-point scale than before they participated in qual. And likewise, with our models about the overall panel experience, 6.3 percentage points more likely to be happy panelists after they've done qualitative research. And then the last model are the complaints about incentive levels, and no effect here, which we're really excited about, that paying them more is not making them want more money for their surveys. So the big picture story is great news for us. Participating in qualitative research is not negatively impacting subsequent survey participation, either immediately or in the long run. Our data quality is better, especially when we are doing qual with the panelists themselves. it's increasing their satisfaction, and it's not causing demands for higher survey incentives. So our next steps is that we're going to keep monitoring this because we only have 40 studies behind our belt. We're going to keep doing more and more qual with our panelists and monitor how that affects their participation and attrition rates. And then we're going to be expanding the methodologies that we use with our panel to include focus groups and online bulletin boards and monitoring the stats for those methodologies. And finally, we're also in the process of gathering qualitative feedback from our panelists about their experience with qual and quant experiences with the panel. Thank you so much.
We have another contender for being on point, by the way.